Hi everyone, this is R. Vahita, Assistant Professor of CSE Department from Rohini College of Engineering and Technology. I'm here to discuss about cloud computing. The topic we are going to discuss is Identity and Access Management Architecture. In short, we'll call it as IAM. The basic concept and definitions of IAM functions for any service depends on authentication, authorization, auditing. And authentication is a process of verifying the identity of a user or a system. Authentication usually connotes a more robust form of identification. In some use cases, such as service to service interaction, the authentication involves verifying the network service. And authorization is a process of determining the privileges the user or the system is entitled to once the identity is established. Authorization usually follows the authentication step and is used to determine whether the user or service has the necessary privileges to perform certain operations. Auditing. Auditing entails the process of review and examination of authentication, authorization, records and activities to determine the adequacy of IAM system controls to verify the compliance with established security policies and procedure, to detect the breaches in security services and to recommend any changes that are indicated for countermeasures. Now let us see about IAM architecture and practice. IAM is not a monolithic solution that can be easily deployed to gain capabilities immediately. It is as much as aspect of architecture as it is a collection of technology, components, processes, and standard practices. The standard enterprise IAM architecture encompasses several layers of technology, services, and processes. At the core of the deployment architecture is a directory service that acts as a repository for the identity, credential, and user attributes of the organization's user pool. The directory interacts with IAM technology components such as authentication, user management, provisioning, and federation services that support the standard IAM practice and process within the organization. The IAM processes to support the business can be broadly categorized as follows, that is, user management, authorization management, access management, data management and provisioning, monitoring and auditing. So let's see about the user management activities for the effective governance and management of identity life cycles. We call it as user management. Authentication management is activities for the effective governance and management of the process for determining that an entity is who or what it claims to be. Authorization management is activities for the effective governance and management of the process for determining the entitlement rights that decide what resources an entity is permitted to access in accordance with the organization policies. Now let us see about access management. It enforcement of policies for access control is responsible to a request from an entity which may be a user or service wanting to access an IT resource within the organization. Data management and provisioning. Propagation of identity and data for authorization to IT resources via automated or manual processes. Monitoring and auditing. Monitoring, auditing, and reporting complaints by users regarding access to resources within the organization based on the defined policies. IAM processes support the following operational activities. First, let us see about provisioning, which can be thought of as a combination of duties of the human resources and IT departments, where the users are given access to data repositories or systems, applications, and databases based on a unique user identity. Deprovisioning works in the opposite manner, which results in the deletion or deactivation of an identity or of privileges assigned to the user identity. Credential and attribute management. These processes are designed to manage the life cycle of credentials and user attributes, create, issue, manage, revoke to inappropriate account use. Credentials are usually bound to an individual and are verified during the authentication process. The processes include provisioning of attributes, static, example standard text password, and dynamic means one time password because the password changes often, and credentials that comply with the password standard, which is passwords resistant to dictionary attacks, handling passwords, expiration, encryption. Encryption management of credentials during transit and at rest, and access policies of user attributes, which is privacy and handling of attributes for various regulatory reasons. Entitlement management. Entitlements are also referred to as authorization policies. The process in this domain address the provisioning and deprovisioning of privileges needed for the user to access the resources, including the systems, applications, and databases. Proper entitlement management ensures that users are assigned only the required privileges. Next, we see about compliance management. This process implies that access rights and privileges are monitored and tracked to ensure the security of an enterprise's resources. The process also helps auditors verify compliance to various internal access control policies and standards that include practices such as segregation of duties, access monitoring, periodic auditing, and reporting. The next term is identity federation management. Federation is a process of managing the trust relationships established beyond the internal network boundaries or administrative domain boundaries among distinct organizations. A federation is an association of organizations that come together to exchange information about their users and resources to enable the collaborations and transactions. Centralization of authentication, which we call it as auth-n, and authorization is called as auth-z. A central authentication and authorization infrastructure elevates the need for application developers to build custom authentication and authorization features into their applications. Furthermore, it promotes a loose coupling architecture where applications become agnostic to the authentication methods and policies. This approach is also called as externalization of authentication and authorization from applications. So this is the diagram which shows the identity life cycle where the relationship begins. The provisioning, authentication also happens, authorization happens, and self-service, then password management, which comes to the deprovisioning and compliance of the relationship ends. Now let us see about IAM practices in the cloud. When compared to the traditional applications deployment model within the enterprise, the IAM practices in the cloud are still evolving. In the current state of IAM technology, standards support by SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS is not consistent across providers. Although the large providers such as Google, Microsoft, and Salesforce.com seem to demonstrate basic IAM capabilities, our assessment is that they still fall short of the enterprise IAM requirements for managing the regulatory privacy and data protection. The maturity model takes into account the dynamic nature of IAM users, systems, and applications in the cloud and addresses the four key components of the IAM automation process: user management, new users, user management, user modifications, authentication management, authorization management are the key components. IAM practices and processes are applicable to cloud services. They need to be adjusted to the cloud environment. Broadly speaking, user management functions in the cloud can be categorized as follows: cloud identity administration, federation or SSO, authentication, authorization management, compliance management. Thank you.